Welcome to Lecture 7.1, in which we will provide an introduction to photosynthesis and learn a bit about the properties of light and structures involved before learning about the details in the next two videos. While the mitochondria is the star of cellular respiration, the chloroplast is the star of photosynthesis, taking carbon dioxide and turning it into carbohydrates. Our learning objectives for this video are to describe the overall reactants and products of photosynthesis, explain how pigments allow plants to absorb energy from sunlight, describe the structure of a leaf, and describe the components of a chloroplast. Photosynthesis is the process of using light, which is what photo means, to make glucose and oxygen from carbon dioxide and water, which is where synthesis comes in. This process is why plants need water and why they are good for taking up carbon dioxide. Using light as the energy source, plants can take the water and carbon dioxide and create oxygen and carbohydrates, such as glucose. Here is the photosynthesis equation. It is very similar to the cellular respiration equation from the last lecture, but the reactants and products are reversed. In cellular respiration, catabolism is occurring because we are breaking glucose down and obtaining energy in the form of ATP. In photosynthesis, anabolism is occurring because we are using energy, in this case light, to make glucose. Remember that light is a form of energy, and is also referred to as radiant energy. We generally think of light as taking the form of waves. This is a diagram that represents what is called the electromagnetic spectrum, which divides radiant energy up into different categories based on wavelength. The rainbow here represents the visible spectrum, which is the light that humans can actually see. Purple is towards the shorter end of the spectrum that we can see, with the 400 nanometer referring to the wavelength, or how long the wave is. We are unable to see ultraviolet light, which is shorter than 400 nanometers, and X-rays and gamma rays have even shorter wavelengths. On the other end of the spectrum is red light, which has a longer wavelength. We are also unable to see infrared, as well as microwaves and radio waves. The energy of the wave is inversely proportional to the length of the wave. In other words, the shorter the wavelength, the higher in energy it is, and the longer the wavelength, the lower in energy it is. That means that more blue-shifted light is higher in energy than red-shifted light. A photon is a single unit of light that can be absorbed by a molecule. When this happens, an electron in the molecule becomes excited, which means that it reaches a higher energy state. The energy from the electron can then be collected as it begins returning to its original lower energy state. The molecules that can absorb light in the form of photons are called pigments. There are many different pigments, and each one absorbs different wavelengths of light. The wavelengths that are not absorbed are reflected, and the reflected light is what we see. For example, here is the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll A, the main pigment for photosynthesis. On the x-axis is the range of visible light, and the y-axis represents how much of the light is absorbed. We can see two peaks for chlorophyll A, one in the blue light region and another in the red light region. In the green light region, there is no absorption. This means that chlorophyll A absorbs red and blue light, but doesn't absorb green light. Instead, the green light is reflected, which is why leaves and other organisms that perform photosynthesis using chlorophyll appear green to us. Chlorophyll B is similar to chlorophyll A, but the peaks are slightly different, allowing it to absorb light that chlorophyll A does not. However, it still does not absorb green light, and so it also appears as green to us. Carotenoids are another pigment. You can see that it absorbs blue and some green light, but does not absorb red light. That's why things high in carotenoids, such as carrots, generally appear as an orange color to us. While chlorophyll A is the main pigment, chlorophyll B and carotenoids are accessory pigments, which means that they help with photosynthesis, but are not able to perform photosynthesis alone. Chlorophyll A is the most effective at absorbing light, and is also the one responsible for the electron transfer that we will see in the next video. In plants, photosynthesis primarily takes place in leaves. If we were to zoom into the leaf, we would see that it actually has layers. The leaf is covered on both sides by cuticles, which is a waxy film that provides a protective layer for the leaf. The epidermis is the outermost layer of cells on the leaf, similar to how our skin is our outermost layer. It has both an upper epidermis on top and a lower epidermis on the bottom. The mesophyll is the middle layer of the leaf, and is the most important part in the context of photosynthesis. It contains a thick layer of plant cells that have chloroplasts, and so is the site of photosynthesis in leaves. The stomata are small openings in the lower epidermis, and these allow for gas exchange. Carbon dioxide enters through the stomata, while oxygen leaves from the stomata. Chloroplasts, as we have learned, are the organelles that are responsible for photosynthesis. No other organelle can perform this function, so cells without chloroplasts are unable to do photosynthesis. Like the mitochondria, the chloroplast has an outer membrane and an inner membrane, and the space between is called the intermembrane space. However, what we really care about is the stuff inside. Chloroplasts contain membrane-bound, disc-shaped structures called thylakoids. The thylakoid itself is composed of a thylakoid membrane, and the inner area of the thylakoid is called the thylakoid space. The thylakoids are what contain chlorophyll. They are what allow chloroplasts to perform photosynthesis. Thylakoids are always found in stacks, and a single stack is referred to as a granum, or grana for multiple stacks. The stroma is the internal environment of the chloroplast, similar to the matrix in mitochondria, and it surrounds the thylakoids. When we go into the details of photosynthesis, we will primarily be focusing on the thylakoids and the stroma. While cellular respiration is divided into 4 phases, photosynthesis is just divided into 2. The first is the light-dependent reactions. This is the stage of photosynthesis in which light is actually absorbed by the chlorophyll in the thylakoids, setting off a chain of reactions that culminates in the production of oxygen from water, ATP, and NADPH. The second is the light-independent reactions, also referred to as the Calvin cycle. This is a stage of photosynthesis that does not directly use light. It uses the ATP and NADPH created by the light-dependent reactions to take carbon dioxide and create glucose molecules. We will first talk about the light-dependent reactions, then go into the light-independent reactions. In this video, we learned that the overall reactants of photosynthesis are water and carbon dioxide, and the overall products are oxygen and glucose. We learned that pigments are able to absorb specific wavelengths of light energy in the form of photons, which will excite electrons and allow energy to be harvested as the electron returns to its original state, and what is not absorbed is reflected. In plants, photosynthesis occurs in the leaf, and specifically it occurs in the mesophyll, which is the middle layer that contains plant cells with chloroplasts. If we zoom further in, we see that chloroplasts themselves contain membrane-bound disc-shaped structures called thylakoids. The thylakoids are the part that contain the chlorophyll, and so are the true site of photosynthesis. In the next video, we will learn about the light-dependent reactions and what chlorophyll is doing in the thylakoids. Thanks for watching.